Good morning. Myself, Reshma Singh from Army Institute of Education, Greater Noida. The topic which we are going to discuss today comes under Course Code 212 and course title is Knowledge and Curriculum. First of all, I would like to discuss the definition of curriculum. The planned and guided learning experiences and intended learning outcomes formulated through the systematic reconstruction of knowledge and experiences under the auspices of the school for the learner's continuous and willful growth in personal social competence by Daniel Tender, 1980. So, the topic which we are going to discuss today is subject centered approach to curriculum development. These are the major points of subject centered curriculum. The subject's knowledge occupies the central position. The subject centered curriculum corresponds mostly to the textbook written for the specific subject. For example, if it is a science, so basically the main areas of science is covered under science subject. Next, traditional areas in the traditional disciplines. Interdisciplinary topics that touch on a wide variety of fields on process such as problem solving, on the goal of teaching students to be critical consumer of information. Here are some characteristics of subject centered curriculum. Information for further use. Importance is given to acquire knowledge and information. Only these subjects are considered important, have value, and the individual have benefit from it in further. Vocational importance. Stress entirely on the content. Basically, here the main focus is only on the content rather than learning. Whole class instruction occurs frequently with the smaller groups. Use of class time is largely determined by the teacher. As the teacher is playing the major role, so the large the large time is occupied or is taken by the teacher's interaction. Next, traditional form of the curriculum. As this is coming from generations to generations, so we can call it as traditional form of the curriculum. The teacher depends upon the textbook to guide the curriculum. Teacher is totally dependent upon the textbook as she is pre-planned for the whole course in advance. Next, practice and skill is emphasized. Next, emphasis is placed upon acquiring information for further use. Progress is measured by how much of the subject a pupil has learnt. So, here the point is that it is that kind of curriculum or where the main focus is on subject. The students are asked to learn only that thing which is asked in the exam. Next, all knowledge is imparted to the student by the teacher. As I said, teacher is playing the major role. So the main role is of teacher who is taking an initiative to interact. Students are here in a passive position. Let's move on to the next slide. In the Philippines, our curricula in any level is also divided in different subjects or courses. Most of the schools using this kind of structure aim for excellence in the subject matter content. For example, here we can take the example of photosynthesis from science. If the teacher has taught the students the process of photosynthesis in the class, as what all things will be included in photosynthesis like sunlight, water, chlorophyll, stomata, or what is the process, how does it occur, what is prepared by this, what is the equation of photosynthesis. So the expectation of this teacher is that the students will be able to answer all these questions when she assesses them. I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next slide. So as you all can see, dear learners, this is the flow chart of the subject centered curriculum design. So, subject to be taught. So basically, if we talk about science or maths or English, so here the main thing is the subject to be taught. Next, definition of important, generalization and understanding to teach. And the second, topic areas within the subject to be covered. Identification of accompanying intellectual disciplines. Next, determination of objectives. Next, deciding upon learning experiences related to mastering the content. Next, organizing the experiences. And at last, evaluating the extent of mastery of what was taught. So, as I told you, the example of photosynthesis can be taken here or you can relate with that example. So, let's move on to the next slide. Advantages of subject centered design. The advantages of subject centered curriculum are students like it, they are used to it, and it fits their idea of what school should be. By this point, we can understand that actually this is the thing which is going on from one generation to the next generation, like it is all the subject content which we focus and we only learn that aspect. We are only limited to that specific subject only. Next point, what student learn, they learn well. If the student is learning photosynthesis, so they will learn that process equally to their maximum level. Next, this approach is efficient in a field in which resources for staff development are scant. Next, easy to teach. Learners learns structural pattern. For example, here the structural pattern can be what is the definition, what is the equation, and what is the process, draw the diagram. So all these things are in a structure which is asked in the exam to assess the students. Avoid burden. There is not much burden on the students as well. It makes a subject more comprehensive. Teachers are familiar with the format, maintains children interest by allowing them to do what is important to them, minimize adult child conflicts. Complementary books are written. Here by complementary books we can say that, like if we have science NCRT book, there are many complementary or reference books such as S. Chand or Pradeep, for science. So students can also prefer that for that specific subject to go into deep of that content. Let's move on to the next slide. Disadvantages of subject centered design. Teachers would not be able to innovate their teaching style to help children learn in a creative way. If if the student is confined to a limit, he will not be able to explore himself. He will not be able to imagine out of the box. He will not be able to think in a creative way. So here the teacher is limiting her style to create, to innovate, to initiate that creation in the student. Next point, children simply memorize what they need to know in order to pass exam or test instead of actual learning it. Basically, children will learn only that chapter or that content which is going to come in the exam, and they are just learning that to pass the exam. They are not actually learning that thing. They are not thinking. They are just grabbing or memorizing, or we can say that rote memorization is taken place. My next point, teachers are teaching the children to think inside the box in order to pass the exams. As I told you earlier, passive learning, as students are not being the part of the interaction, only the teacher is playing the major role. She is in active position and students are in passive position. They are passive listeners, so they are not able to interact or to imagine the things in their way. So here the teacher is in active position and the students are in passive position or passive learners. Separation of these subjects, it prevents students from understanding the wider context of what they learn. Students learn maths in one period, English in another period, and so on. Separate classes. Like there are separate classes for each subject: maths class, science class, social science class, English class. And in that specific period, students are confined to that subject only. They are not exploring themselves. They are not imagining. They are not thinking out of the box, and they are limited to a specific area or specific limit. I hope by this subject centered design or curriculum is quite clear, or is quite very much defined to you all. At last, I hope this will help you in your understanding the subject centered approach to curriculum development. Thank you. Thank you so much.